This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Supertrain, Episode 1. Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that's going off the rails. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
I'll give you something that's real in a second, but I do like that every sort of... I looked a little bit into the different reviews and things on this, and every single one has to have a train pun. I think you just have to.
You gotta.
Yeah.
Supertrain demands it.
Yeah, off the rails. That's the easy one.
That was I just was like, easy, simple.
Yeah, but I'll give you two things that are real. 2 lines of dialogue from the show, and you tell me what you like better. The first one, sprinkle that over your liver. That was one that I liked.
Okay, good.
And then the other one was they were talking about this lady, and they said, she's the kind of girl that reads cornflake boxes. I think that meant she's dumb. I think that's what that meant.
So. You know what I think, Jordan? Shut up and go to bed.
that I forgot about that. That line is said like 10 times.
There is, I mean... I'm sure we'll talk about it slightly, but there is a sequence where the joke is an abusive husband yells at his wife 5 or 6 times, and it's just supposed to get funnier and funnier every time.
And then she goes at one point, "That's all you ever say is shut up and go to bed." Then he goes, "Shut up and get to bed."
And it's like, what a hilarious piece of domestic abuse.
It is funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's amusing how offensive that scene reads in 2021.
It is tough to watch.
Around. Yeah.
It is tough to watch because that character, and maybe credit to the actor, is very scary. And he's
a big dominating man.
You feel very afraid for this woman, but what you're watching is supposed to be a lighthearted comic moment where you're just like, this is way too dark, you guys.
Yeah.
You are genuinely afraid for this person.
Yeah, it's...
and they're also like, but isn't it kind of hilarious?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the show Supertrain. That's the show we're talking about.
We really got off the rails there.
Hey, we did. We did get off the rails. This was a train that just kept going full steam ahead.
Yes.
Do you think at the time this tone was sort of all over the place? Like, do you think viewers... You're 12 years old. You're watching Supertrain. It's 1979. Do you think... you notice these sorts of things, or do you think it's just par for the course?
No, I think this is just the atmosphere, the culture at the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Would you have made it through 2 commercial breaks, though?
This show?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I know. I thought the same thing.
But yes, we're watching Supertrain. We're watching it. It was suggested by a listener on Twitter, at Rocka on the Go.
Oh, yeah, classic at Rocka. And this is a real... I don't know when Love Boat came out, but I think that's what they're going for here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is
sort of like
Love Boat style program.
Yeah, so every episode, I'm going to assume there's a different cast of characters on this train and a different adventure of some sort. Yeah,
I would say that, especially since the plot of this is centered around the passengers more so than the crew of the actual Supertrain. And had you heard of this show before?
No.
Yes.
No, but it seems like a winner, doesn't it?
Brand new to me.
Doesn't it seem like a winner?
It seems like it's going to go the distance.
Yeah, I don't know. It's after we watched the first episode. We'll go after that. First episode was a rough go.
It's a double episode. We're only talking about one episode because it's a feature length version. But I did feel like it only had the plot for a regular length version.
I thought the same thing. But here's the thing, and we'll get into it. How would you even cut this down? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it would be hard. Like, you think, I'll cut out some of these subplots, but like, I don't know if you can.
It's still pretty long, I think, and I think you could cut some subplots. But let's hold on before we get into it, Jordan. Let's talk about Supertrain being on the air. It's aired on NBC. It's airing from February 7th to May 5th, 1979.
Ooh, not long.
Did not last a very long time. And Jordan, let's just have a quick look at what's happening in the world during Supertrain.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, 1979. I'm there.
Here's what's happening. February 8th. Philips, the tech company, demos the first compact disc CD to the public.
Oh, that's a good one.
So CD's coming out here.
Oh, yeah, Philips.
March 19th, C-SPAN launches. No C-SPAN before this.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's only probably 3 major channels on TV at this time.
Yeah, probably CBC, ABC,
CBS,
CBS,
NBC,
sorry,
and
NBC.
ABC.
CBC's Canadian.
Yeah.
It's definitely on the air though.
Yeah, that's on the air. Don't worry about it.
March 28th, the 3 Mile Island nuclear meltdown occurs.
Which one's that? I don't know if I remember.
3 Mile
that.
Island, it's the New York.
Oh,
meltdown.
right. Oh, okay.
It's the one in American soil.
Yeah. I call it the Patriot meltdown.
The Patriot meltdown.
Yeah, yeah.
You're a real patriot. Very, very good of you.
Yeah, that's not nice.
And then April 1st, Iran becomes an Islamic republic following the Iranian Revolution.
Yeah, and it was all uphill from there. Everything was good. Oh, no, uphill? Is that the? Well, anyways, things were much,
I think
much better.
Yes, things have gone fine.
Yeah.
Not a just devastating thing to happen to anyone.
Yeah. You ever see pictures of Iran in like 1978? Like,
It's
oh,
like
it looks like a nice place to live.
It is a completely different
Yeah.
world. It is like the Iranian friends I have who whose parents came here. It's like bizarre. Like it's truly like a switch got flicked and
Yeah.
like it just turned back time.
Classic Ayatollah, am I right?
Yeah. Oh my god. Oof.
Yeah.
Anyway, Supertrain doesn't delve into any of these things.
No, this is
Supertrain probably made it worse for people.
Yeah, this is a show that, I mean, we should say, like, I think this is clearly an expensive show. I think the model train work is really good.
Best part of the show.
For 1979, I think the model train works really good.
Sets look great.
Yeah, sets look good. I think the actors are The writing is
I think these are. Let's stop for
Okay.
1 second. Let's say.
I can't. I'm so excited.
Let's talk about the summary and we can talk
Yeah, okay.
about the show.
Okay.
We're all over the place. We really are off the rails.
Yeah.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 1: Express to Terror.
Yeah, a great title. It's got a point right there.
Got a point right there. I would have never titled this episode this. 'Cause
No,
there's
no.
Express to Terror, but
Yeah, no, but it's a great title.
great title. Supertrain makes its inaugural run from New York City to L.A., but a murder, a mob assassin, and a case of mistaken identity threaten to derail the journey in a feature-length pilot episode.
That's pretty good. That's actually that's pretty good. I think that got everything in there.
Yeah, it'll lure you into thinking this is going to be a much more concise episode.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if I wrote it down. It takes about 15 minutes to get to the plot, which is there's going to be some sort of attempt at an assassination. It took 15 minutes to get there. So the first 15 minutes is setup, which is fine, but it's achingly slow.
Yeah, well, we start right off with the origin story of Supertrain, which is done in like a heartbeat. But the federal government has contracted the Trans-Allied Rail Corporation to build the first continental railroad.
75 years.
75 years.
Yeah.
It's going to cross the country in 36 hours.
Yeah, because it's an atom-powered steam machine.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And this company is run by a man named Winfield Root, and his shareholders are not happy about this contract he's taken. They do not believe that trains are the future. In fact, I believe at the shareholders meeting, one of them says, "Your psychotic fascination with railroads is going to ruin this company."
Well, what do you think the organization, this company, how does it work? Because it seems like there's a bunch of shareholders, but he's clearly the head of the company.
He's a real Rockefeller style.
But he mentions at one point, he's like, well, I'm going to be dying in a few years, so I don't care what happens.
Well, that's my favorite part is this shareholder's like, "You're going to destroy this company with this fool's venture." And he's just like, I have less time to live than the fingers on one hand. I don't care if I trash this company.
It's bizarre.
I was like, ballsy move, my friend.
Yeah.
Drag this company to the grave with you.
Oh, and I should just say, while we're talking, I'm pulling up the characters' names in this, because I think I got maybe an hour in and I still didn't know what anyone's name was. There's so many people in this show.
We'll get into it. We cut from this scene where they announced they're going to build this atomic-powered steam engine, this Supertrain, and we cut to 22 months later, it's all built. I'm like, what a turnaround.
I know. That was maybe the biggest science fiction turn of this, is that in less than 2 years...
It's done. A
It's
railway
done.
across the country and a Supertrain
I'm
is
assuming,
built.
yeah, they've actually built the actual railroad.
Yeah.
And the
Supertrain
train.
is like double the size of a normal train, so you need a
Yeah.
special railroad.
Can we just mention that real quick? So the Supertrain is very futuristic looking.
Mm-hmm. Very sleek,
Very sleek.
very aluminum.
But does it have 2 stories?
Oh, yeah, there's an elevator.
I know, that was the thing. It has an elevator. But
But
when
it
I
only
looked
goes
at
up one story.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because when I look at it it didn't really look like it had 2 stories.
No, I think your problem is you're thinking of the Supertrain too small. It's actually quite large. Like when you see that, like a regular train is probably half the size, both in width and height.
Oh, that makes sense then.
Like
right.
I think that it's like super sized. Like if you tried to put a
It's a good
train
name,
on those
then.
tracks, it wouldn't work.
Right.
because
you need to be able to build a super track.
The scale is kind of a thing that like takes a little bit of working. You do see they have built like a life-size version that's in the New York subway or train station, and that's the only time you get a sense of scale. And it is, I believe, 2 stories and like quite double wide.
Yeah, because it is weird because there's a scene where, not that it's that important, but someone takes an elevator. I was like, wait a minute.
I know there's an elevator on the Supertrain. I was like, there's only 2 floors though.
Yeah,
but there's also what is in there? There's a gym.
Yeah.
There's a hair salon. There's a pool. There's an entire medical bay.
Yeah. Well, they sort of have a character. What's his name?
David? Is it
Dave Noonan? Dave Noonan, and he's sort of kind of a comic relief, kind of like your introduction to everything.
Passenger relations.
Yeah. So he sort of walks through the train, so we get a sense of the geography and all these things that Luke mentioned. But his main character trait is he's looking to get laid.
Yeah, I mean his subplot, which we'll
1979,
never
folks.
talk about again, is throughout the episode. The granddaughter of the rich man, Winfield, she's also riding the first train. And the second she sees this dough-faced man, she's like, well, I'm going to have sex with you.
Yeah.
And the rest of the episode is just the crew trying to stop Dave Noonan from having sex with his granddaughter. And so it's constantly just like, there's literally one scene where they get on an elevator and start making out, and somehow one of the crew pops through the roof of the moving elevator to be like,
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, and that's it. Like, she has no character other than she wants to have sex with this guy for reasons.
They just keep cutting to little scenes where they like bump into each other, like, let's have sex, and someone's like, no, why don't you not have sex? And then like the whole thing wraps up at the end when they get to L.A. Winfield gets off and he's just like, Dave Noonan, my daughter wants to come back on the train. You take good care of her, and we all have a good laugh.
Yeah. So that's one plot line that could have been dropped. That
instantly,
it's
like
it wouldn't
from
hurt.
a sex comedy, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but it's also not, because it's as tame and PG as possible.
Well, they just never get very far with it, so it doesn't get too graphic, I guess. But it's very weird. Since this is Love Boat adjacent, as we've said, it's very similar to Love Boat. There are a lot of guest stars on it.
Yeah.
And they'll be the core plot. And to your point, Jordan, it's tough to figure out which ones are important when we get started. So I'm going to go through all of them, because basically train's waiting, some old man comes and announces first outing's coming, and like the guests on this train swarm it like it's a Black Friday sale. People just pour through the doors. They can't wait to ride Supertrain, and we get introduced to all kinds of people here. One of them is one group is basically the Hollywood elite has shown up.
So maybe I'm dumb. I didn't understand who these people were and what their relation to one another was for quite a long time, because they kind of just keep bumping into people, and there's people like, I need this part or something, and I'm like, what is happening? I need money. And I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are. Why are they talking about these things?
Well, the Hollywood elite circle is producer David Belnick, who's very much a what's his name, Robert
Evans sort of
Robert
character.
Evans character.
Yeah, it's played by George Hamilton.
Played by George Hamilton.
Yeah.
And he's sort of there with an entourage of hangers-on, including one guy who's only important because he'll later die, which is a director named Brad, who is his favorite director, wears a cowboy hat for some reason.
Yeah.
Barely gets a line. And he is being pursued, this producer is being pursued the whole time by a talent agent named Lucy.
Right.
And she's riding the train because she's desperately trying to get Belnick to cast her client, Karen Prince, in his new movie. And Karen Prince is also referred to as Miss Situation Comedy, so I guess she's trying to branch out.
Right.
And if Lucy does not get Karen this part, she's going to drop the agency. And so Lucy needs to save her relationship with his client.
Yeah.
That's
but
her
it's
whole
so
thing.
unimportant.
Well, what's crazy is Lucy and Belnick basically fall out of the show. So does Karen. We will rarely see Karen, even though we're introduced right at the top as like, this is the big thing. Get Karen this part. What's more important about these Hollywood people is that Karen is traveling with her alcoholic, jealous husband, Rick, who is more of a character. And to keep Rick under control, Lucy has hired him a grown man to be his chaperone, a man named Mike Post, who is our protagonist. So imagine all of these story plots, and you come down to like the main person on the story is the guy hired to make sure the drunk husband.
See, that's what I didn't understand.
Trouble.
I didn't understand what Mike was there, because he's like, you need the money, but if you don't do something, I'm gonna have money. I'm like, wait, is he trying to be an actor? I don't know. I didn't understand he was the chaperone. Like, it was a line of dialogue I must have missed.
Yeah, no, and there's some indication that like he's just hired to be Rick's friend and keep him out of trouble. And the only reason he's been hired to do this is Mike needs to get to L.A. because he owes a mobster named Big Ed $40,000, and Lucy is
a gambling debt.
Yeah, he's got a gambling debt, and Lucy, the agent, has promised if he keeps Rick from ruining the casting deal, she will pay his gambling debt. So that's what Rick needs to do. Is
the casting deal
Mike
is worth so much money that if she's going to make a ton of money anyway. So like $40,000 is not a big deal.
Yeah. So if Mike can just keep Rick out of trouble, he'll get $40,000.
Oh, and I should mention that Karen Prince is played by Vicki Lawrence.
Oh, the Miss Sitcom.
As you would know, remember we mentioned Mama's Family.
Oh, she's from Mama's Family.
She's the star of Mama's Family, who I believe I actually called Sherry Lawrence, which is a huge mistake because that's lamb chop. But it's Vicki Lawrence.
I have a feeling that. This is too far removed from my knowledge of celebrities, but I have a feeling most of the guest stars in this were probably real movers and shakers.
I didn't really recognize many of them. Like I knew obviously George Hamilton and Vicki Lawrence, but like I don't even really recognize like Mike Post was played by Steve Lawrence. Someone else might recognize him. I didn't.
Who's Rick? Who is the jealous drunk husband?
I don't know who that is. He just looks like a dude that'd be in like
what
1970s.
Was his name though?
Was it Jack? Jack Fisk?
His name's Rick.
Oh, Rick.
Rick Pintz.
Played by Dawn Meredith.
And I feel like Dawn Meredith is somebody, but maybe I'm insane. Anyway, there's all these are all just guest stars, but they get the primary plot. And I'm just going to mostly talk about the primary plot, but there's also
That's a good idea.
There's also this sort of secondary grouping of people who will come and go from the main plot, and it's the this couple who's traveling together, Jack Fisk and Cindy Chappelle.
Yeah.
And Jack, all we really learned about off the top is that he's recently had so much plastic surgery that no one should be able to recognize him, but he's so concerned that they might, he's going to stay in his compartment the whole time.
I also missed that.
And that's why he won't leave his compartment.
I just thought he was like a bum because he's only ever wearing like an undershirt with suspenders, and he sort of walks around growling and says nasty things to his girlfriend/wife. I don't know what the
it's probably a girlfriend.
is.
They never really clear. This is Cindy Chappelle, and she's the one who we get to watch be spatially abused for 90 minutes.
Yeah, and it's not fun.
No, very uncomfortable to watch. And also, she has been asked to play the role as if she's Margaret Robbie playing Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Very, very. I'm like, these are the same performance as Harley Quinn.
Yeah, there's this thing. I was actually thinking about it. I'm assuming it's kind of like not a trope, but it's like a style of character you don't see much anymore, which is like she's kind of dopey but lovable, but
talks in a baby voice the whole time.
Yeah, it's odd to see.
It is very strange, and they'll like keep coming back to this couple. We won't when we talk about this, but mostly what it is anytime she comes back to the compartment, which he won't leave, he will either threaten to hit her or hit her.
Yeah.
And at some point they go into like, they never really explain why or how she's there, but at some point he'll be like, it's like, remember what your dead brother Ernie told you before he died, to stick with me.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, there's some sort of like, they implied, at least what I took, was that he was friends with her brother, and sort of her brother was like, you should date this guy because I know he'll protect you. So she sort of did go with him, even though the guy is abusive. I think that's what they're implying. But it was a weird line of dialogue to build this relationship. So I guess to explain why she's with him, because I think even probably at that time when this show aired, people would be like, why didn't she just leave? Because he's terrible. But
yeah. Anyway, all the guests have arrived. There's this whole cast of Supertrain people who will come and go, colleagues. At some point, they even introduce. They're like, "Hey, here's our lineup of porters who look like they would work at Hooters." And you're like, "Oh, is that what this is going to be? This weird Hooters girl thing?"
Yeah, and what's his face?
They never come back.
Yeah, Dave Noonan's at one point, he's like, "Chest out. That's what I like to see." And they're like,
"Oh yeah, he's like a boss that should not be working there."
Yeah.
Anyway, everyone's on board. The train's about to get ready to go. They boot up the supercomputer that runs the atomic engine. And the plot gets started as we see a mysterious set of hands activate a dynamite bomb in a briefcase.
Yeah, so that's 15 minutes in.
And we're like, I guess the Express to Terror has begun. Mm-hmm. But essentially, Mike, the man with the gambling debts, he finds this briefcase immediately in his compartment, does not recognize it, and passes it to what I would say is probably, other than this Noonan character who we keep cutting back to, the only other crew member we see a lot.
Yeah, it's like a bellhop.
Yeah, a porter named Boone. And Boone will just keep popping up perpetually in this episode. But he sees Boone. He's like, this isn't my briefcase. Do you want to see who it belongs to? And Boone takes it. We're like, oh, okay, I guess now the bomb is somewhere on the train. Except we'll cut back a few scenes later. And Boone's like, I can't find the owner, so I've returned to give it back to you, Mike Post. And it's at this point Mike Post has met up with Rick, his charge. They're both drunk already.
Yeah.
They've gone out onto the deck on the outside of the train. So
I know, which is weird.
they're standing outside of the train that's traveling, and I was just like, all right, I need to do the math on this. They're going to get from New York to L.A. in 36 hours. This train is arguably traveling at 124 kilometers an hour, or for our American listeners, 77 miles per hour. So this train is flying, and they're just out on the deck, like, hanging out.
And where was the deck? Was the deck on the front or the back?
I believe it's the back, because
Okay.
what happens is they're like,
Maybe it's blocking a little bit of the wind.
it could be. The briefcase is returned to him. He's just like, I couldn't find out who it belongs to. I don't know how hard Boone tried, but he's like, I'm giving this back to you. At this exact moment, for some reason, Cindy, the abused girlfriend, has left the port. She's sort of seeing the train. She has a meet cute outside now with Mike Post. They're going to find love.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's clear from the beginning.
And as they're looking at this briefcase, they're like, well, let's open it up and see what it belongs to. And then the train jostles. It falls off. And Cindy, for some reason, is the only one who looks out at the briefcase as it explodes in the distance.
Yeah, well, there's another thing. I mean, you just have to sort of buy it because it's a plot point in the show. But I would assume, with the size of the explosion, they all
a
would
lot
have
of
heard
dynamite.
it.
Yeah, but she's the only one who notices.
Yeah.
And you would think that at this point she's like, I think that briefcase exploded. And you would think at this point everyone would just dismiss her. But for whatever reason, Mike hears this and he's immediately like, oh no, it must be Big Ed trying to kill me for that $40K I owe him.
Yeah, because there's no indication really at that point, because I think he's had maybe one phone call, and I think he has a few more phone calls where he keeps speaking
He's just
to
begging Big Ed to wait for him.
Yeah, and there's no indication that the guy is going to physically hurt him. He's just like, I need the money when you get in.
Yeah.
That's it. So they're like, it's a bit of a leap of logic that he would, for some reason, kill him along the way because he still wants the money.
And he theoretically is coming with the money. He just needs to keep Ed
So it's like, why kill him?
from doing anything. But essentially, this is driven home more because Mike and Rick the next day, in his babysitting duties, is like, hey, let's go up to the gym. Let's take a nice sauna.
Yeah.
I know you were drunk last night and really wanted to punch that producer in the face, but let's calm you down. Let's get you a nice sauna going.
Yeah.
They go in, and of course, the mysterious assassin reappears and, as you do, uses a screwdriver to take the handle off of the door to the sauna.
Yeah. Well, I just know from watching TV that anytime someone goes in a sauna, that means they're going to get caught in there.
Yeah, he turns up that heat, and
Yeah.
they go to get out, and they grab the doorknob, and it falls right off, and they're like, we're going to die in here. And they would if it weren't for the porter Boone dropping by to drop off glasses of cold water.
Yeah.
And he, like, turns to the big, beefy trainer who's working. He's like, hey, I think those guys are dying in the sauna. And it's so funny because the beefy trainer's like, he goes to the door. They can't open it because the handle's falling off. He's running around. Mike and Rick are in there banging on the door trying to get out. And Boone just reaches down and picks up the doorknob that fell off and just puts it in and opens it for
and just
them.
opens it with no problem.
So they could have done the same thing on the inside.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
But I also, like the tension is entirely absent from the scene.
I mean, it's supposed to be played comically, but it's
my
weird.
point. At the very end, they're like, they get out and they're all, they're very hot and they're like, they're dehydrated or whatever. And then the guy's like, you guys want a glass of water? And it does music to indicate that's the joke. And you're like, what? I should also say, this music is hilarious through the show. It's wonderful.
I mean, it's very funky.
It's very, very funky the whole time. Everything's just like, and you're like, oh, wonderful. There's something happened.
So Mike and Rick now both believe there's an assassin after Mike, but Mike won't tell the staff of the Supertrain yet because he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to cause a ruckus yet. And Supertrain apologizes for the mishap with the sauna by giving them free tickets, I guess.
Yeah, they sort of have like there's nothing wrong with the train, so yeah, keep quiet.
We'll comp you this particular thing. Mike has noticed, though, as he's been wandering around this packed train, that a man dressed like a blues brother seems to be looking at him a lot.
He looks like an extra from like a mob movie. He's got his sunglasses on, dark kind of slicked hair kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's walking around all sketchy at all the times.
And they ask a bartender, like, who's that? And he's like, oh, that guy? His name is Paco. Like, I don't know what he does, but I'm afraid to ask.
When we were watching Outcasts, what was the name they called the one guy, and his name was Patrick?
Oh, Patrick Baxter?
Yeah.
What was it? What was the short form of Patrick Baxter?
Pack.
That's
all
what
right,
it was.
so it wasn't quite Paco. Anyways.
Similar to Paco.
Yeah,
if you had a third name at the end. Patrick Baxter O'Sullivan. There you go. Anyway, so this gets them all freaked out. They're like, oh, he must be dangerous. This bartender's implied as much. So Mike, Rick, and Mike's new love interest, Cindy, the abused girlfriend, they hatch a little plan because the train is stopping in Big Rock, Arkansas to do a little ceremony for its inaugural run because as is not important, but we get to learn Winfield Root grew up there, so he's back to rub it in their faces.
Yep. Yeah. There's so much of that like stuff where you're just like, why are you telling me this? It doesn't add anything. It doesn't like add any color to it. You're just like, okay.
You're just gonna see Winfield and his great mustache.
Yeah.
So what they do is they go to the ceremony, and Mike seeks Paco, of course, watching the ceremony. And so Mike's like, I'm going to head to the train station building, and Paco seems to be following me. I'll pretend to go to the bathroom in there. And what they've done is inside, Cindy then lures Paco toward an extremely oversized steamer trunk.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. She's like,
I can't open it.
yeah, first she talks about, like, do you want a cigarette and all this? And then, yeah, she basically gets him to lean over this.
Yeah, he opens it and he leans over the big empty.
Yeah.
He's like, there's nothing in here. At which point, Rick, the abusive husband, or not abusive, the alcoholic husband, shows up and pushes him in. They lock him in. They're like, we did it. We got that assassin off the train. And they hop on. The train leaves without Paco. Mike calls up Big Ed to him. This is my favorite part. He's like, what they've done is they think Big Ed's man's trying to kill him. So he gets on the train, immediately picks up the train phone, calls Big Ed, and apologizes for throwing his man off the train. And Big Ed's like, what? I don't have anyone on the train. I just want your money when you get here. And they're like, uh-oh, who is that? And
She's a traveling salesman.
yeah, the guy gets out. He's like, his life is ruined. He's like, all my samples are on that train. I'm trying to get to a big conference. Now how am I going to do it? I'm just like, oh, so they just ruined this man's life.
And it is a weird thing because, again, all these things are played for laughs, but I'm going to assume it didn't even land when this aired. I don't think they're as funny as the show thinks
I don't
it
think
is.
so. And like I'm powering through this plot as quickly as I can. But like this is happening at probably minute 45. This plan is like coming into place. And at this point you're having so much trouble tracking what even is the plot of this show.
Well, that's the thing. You're tracking all of these characters. Are they important or not? Which I know sounds weird to say, but like there's too many. So you're just like, I don't know if I should pay attention to this or not because they all have some dialogue.
It takes a while because off the top you're introduced to about 7
Yeah.
to 8 characters that you think you need to know about. And the only ones you need to track are Mike, not even really Rick. Rick's just hanging around with Mike, but he's there the most as well.
You don't even really need to track Cindy, really.
And Cindy just comes and goes, and we just know Cindy's in peril and needs to follow, and like Mike and her are following 11. Eventually she'll be saved.
I like later on when they introduce us to like a character who I think he's the conductor, the guy who's driving the train, and he has this like soliloquy he gives about like how fast the train can go. But they introduce him at like hour 20, and I'm like, why am I just meeting this character? Like, why do I care? And does it matter? Not really.
No. It's kind of weird because they do, and it's funny. This is jumping back a little, but when you watch the opening credits are all for the guest stars, and then at the end of the opening credits, it suddenly says also starring the Supertrain crew, and so it feels like what it is like they know, I guess, Love Boat style. There's a small number of crew who are going to return every week.
Right.
So they're trying to give each of these crew this moment, but all their moments are just like randomly interspersed, and like you can't make it's like, what is this guy's job? I guess he's the driver.
Yeah.
Anyway, not important. We'll move on with the plot. This trio, now that they've thrown this man off, they now have a real debate about like what are they going to do? Is there really an assassin? Like, are we imagining it? And once again, while they're having this debate, Boone walks by, this time with his own steamer trunk, and he just walks by and he's like, Mr. Mike Post, is this your steamer trunk? I just found it somewhere. And he just happens to walk by at the exact moment that the assassin like has a silenced pistol and opens fire on Mike, and they just all like it all hits the steamer. They never know what happened. Nobody's ever aware of this next assassination. Only the audience gets to know another assassination attempt happened.
Until they look and they see the bullet holes, I guess, eventually later. But I mean, the thing is, you're right. It doesn't even really matter, though, because Mike's still at this point, like, I don't know how much more confirmation he needs. If you're on a train and someone gives you a suspicious package and that package explodes and then you make it out.
You get
and
soned.
then you get soned. I'd be like, okay, well, something's funny here. Like, I don't even need the third thing, which he doesn't see.
Well, this was so funny. It's like they add this third thing, suddenly introducing the fact that he could have shot him at any moment. And then because the assassin just like now attempts to shoot him, misses, and then gives up on gunplay going forward.
Yeah.
Whatever. That night, there's a big disco at the club car.
Yeah.
Now, this is important, Jordan.
Yeah.
And, of course, Mike and Rick are hanging out there, getting drunk, meeting former football players, Al Roberts, played by Fred Williamson, which I was like, oh, I'm always happy to see Fred Williamson. And Cindy, of course, is back in her car. She's gotten in trouble with her abusive boyfriend, Jack, because when they were at the ceremony, he was looking at the window of the compartment and saw her hanging out with some men, and he's not into that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is when he smacks around, but it's unpleasant every scene.
And he's just like, I don't want you going to the disco tonight because I don't like it. And she's just like, okay. And then she like sits in the compartment for a few minutes and is like, it sounds like fun. I think I will go, actually. So she just leaves and goes to the party. And, of course, she goes there, meets Mike, and her and Mike, like, find a corner of the party to, like, chat up, and, like, their meet cute continues. And this is, of course, Jack notices she's left, so Jack storms down to the disco, and he finds them in the corner, and he's just like, Cindy, I demand you come back to our compartment right now, or you're in trouble. And then he just walks away, and Mike's like, why don't you just stay with me instead? And she's like, okay, I won't go back to the apartment.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is not going to end well for her, right?
Right.
But she does get this, like, fun. We get a montage of them dancing disco and drinking, and
Everyone has a good time.
Her and Mike are just making out, just going for it.
Yeah, Mike, it's a weird thing because we as a viewer are supposed to just inherently like Mike. He's our star, he's our protagonist. Yes. But he is also really hard making the moves on a lady that he knows is kind of in an abusive relationship.
In a very bad place.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think he convinces her to stay after seeing, like, she could be in trouble if she doesn't go back. Then they make out, and then we cut to her going back to the compartment to Jack's house, and Jack, like, full on punches her in the face.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. It's like he's got this bit of the white knight thing where he's like, I'm going to help you, but it's like, but you're doing it for your own means. It's not like, I'm going to get you out of this abusive relationship. He's like, but also then join this relationship, which you don't know anything about.
Well, he's just like, let's make out,
yeah,
and I'm just still going to send you back to your compartment afterward. And anyway, she goes back. That happens to her, but the disco's kind of wrapping up. The night's ending, and Mike goes to find Rick, who he's supposed to be babysitting, and Rick is sitting at the bar with the bartender. They're playing dice, and Rick is $1.26 million in the hole to the bartender.
Yeah, the game seems to literally be just like, guess the number?
Yeah, it's like, and Mike's like, maybe we should go back. He's like, and Rick's like, nah, I'm going to play again. He's like, double or nothing, and he rolls the dice, and he's like, I don't know, did I win? I'm like, what is happening here? But it's mostly just so that Mike can go up. He's like, oh, I'm going to go up to get some air back on that deck where the deck on the train where you can stand outside, which is next to the pool. And as he gets up there, the assassin this time, like, blackjacks him so he's unconscious, tosses him into the pool to drown.
Mm-hmm.
Except thankfully for Mike, the club car where the disco's happening has a window into the pool.
Yeah, it's very much like you're at a zoo and you've gone underneath so you can see
penguins.
You can see the penguins from down low. Yeah, it's one of those.
And of course, Rick sees his buddy, like, floating in the pool, but he's too drunk to realize it's something bad. But the bartender has his wits about him, so the bartender dives in the pool, and Mike is once more saved from his assassin.
Yeah, which is assassination attempt number 4, correct?
Yeah, this will be number 4.
Yeah.
And Mike finally, at this point, tells the staff that he thinks someone is trying to kill him, and he's like, I am locking myself in my compartment, and I'm not leaving till we get to L.A. That's my plan.
Mm-hmm.
No more assassinations. So he goes in, locks himself in, and as soon as he does, his boss, the agent Lucy, pounds on his door and says, well, you've been in here for 10 minutes. Rick immediately walked away, and he's threatening to beat up that producer because he suspects that the producer slept with his wife last night.
Yeah, and you're not doing your job very well.
So Mike is like, all right, I'll go stop him. Mike steps out of his compartment and just immediately bumps into Rick. Rick's just walking by, and Mike's like, Rick, don't beat up that guy. And Mike's like, I know, I was angry and jealous before, but I realized my wife didn't sleep with him. Let's go to the bar and get some more drinks.
Yeah.
They walk into the bar.
Immediately.
Belnick, the producer, standing at the bar, and Mike's like, is this okay? Are you okay to be in this bar? And Rick's like, of course, I'm not mad anymore. And he just walks over, punches the guy in the face. Mike makes no attempt to stop him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I guess this is a problem. And a barroom brawl breaks out.
And now, to be fair, as dumb a job as it is, he does do a bad job at restraining this guy. So I mean, like, I'm like, what am I paying you for? You only have one thing. Don't let the guy punch the other guy in the face. And he did that.
He just did it.
Yeah.
George Hamilton just got punched right in the face.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, a full barroom brawl breaks out, of course. Everyone's like fighting with each other. And then the Supertrain, of course, the perfect moment, goes into a tunnel.
Yeah.
So everything goes dark. And we see the assassin's hand spring out with a knife in it this time. And he goes to stab Mike, but Mike is wrestling with the cowboy director. And cowboy director gets it in the back. And as the lights come on, we now have this really weird comedy slapstick moment where like Mike's groping around the back of this man like, hey buddy, why are you not moving anymore? And he like grabs the knife. He's like, whoa, he's dead.
Yeah, but that's actually funnier than it is in the show.
But that's his reaction. He's just like, a dead body.
Yeah.
And everyone like sees it, and they're obviously everyone's like, well, Mike killed this man.
Yeah, so he must have killed him for some reason.
For some reason. And now that a murder has finally happened on the train, the Supertrain stops for 15 minutes to allow the FBI to helicopter an agent in.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
investigate the
Agent
murder.
Agent Quinn, right?
Yeah, Agent Quinn arrives, and Mike's the prime suspect. They take him aside, and he's basically told, "Don't leave this train."
Do you think this would have been more interesting if at the beginning of the show there's a murder and then Agent Quinn is brought in and it's him investigating all these people as a way to introduce? I mean, it's very Agatha Christie,
Well,
I get it, but like, don't you think that's maybe
When we got to this point, I was also like, "Oh, this should have just been a drawing room murder. Like that would have been an easier way, because there's going to be some twists coming up of mistaken identities and things, and like that's would have played much better if a detective was investigating it."
Yeah.
But
But
that's
and
not
he's
what's
barely
happened.
he's barely even used.
No. Basically, this FBI guy shows up. Mike's not allowed to leave the train, which, okay, it's moving. Don't worry. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
He is investigating Mike's background. I guess he calls the FBI and says, "Look into this Mike Post for me." And then he immediately gets a call on the train from the Treasury Department. And the Treasury Department says, "Hey, we heard you've been looking into our man, Mike Post. He's an informant against the mob we had testify, and then we gave him a new identity, like witness protection style, to protect him from the mob, the identity of Mike Post." And this FBI guy's like, "Oh, so this is a guy who's in witness protection?"
Yeah.
So weird. We cut back, and abusive Jack and Cindy are still in their like compartment.
Let me just mention something real quick though. I like he's talked to the guy in the FBI, the whatever the
The
person-
Treasury Department.
Yeah, and he's like, "Hey, tell me about this." And they're like, "Yeah, he's in witness protection. His name's Mike Post, blah blah." And he goes, "Can you tell me the real name?" And they're like, "We're not telling you that. We can't give you information." And I'm like, "But you just gave all this other information.
No, I
You just
know.
found out that he's in the witness protection. Like that's enough that you're giving."
It is very funny. I know it's just
Anyway.
like a very their understanding of the inner workings of
Yeah.
these things don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But yes, we cut back. Abusive Jack and Cindy are in their compartment. They hear through the grapevine being the Porter Boone who's involved in everything, that someone died. Cindy immediately assumes it was Mike finally got assassinated. She starts to cry. Jack is annoyed she's crying, so he's like, why don't you go to the hair salon and make yourself look pretty before we get to L.A. and get out of my hair.
Yeah.
And she steps out of her compartment into the hallway, bumps right into Mike Post.
Yeah.
Like every time you step out of your hallway, you bump into the man you're
Well,
looking for.
it's so funny because this show takes so long to get to everything. I mean, you're going through this real fast, and
I'm flying.
It's not the sense you get while watching it, but I do like in the geography. Anytime they just need someone available, they're just right there.
Yeah. If you think this has as much momentum, the show, it doesn't.
Yeah,
There's
it doesn't.
No
this,
momentum.
this is we're at, I would say, about an hour 15 at this point.
Yeah. We're nearly done the movie.
Yeah.
She bumps into Mike, which is my favorite part because Mike sees her for the first time since he like made out with her at the thing and sent her home, and she got beat up. He bumps into her, and Mike's like, notices she has a huge black eye, and his reaction is like, "Yeah, so he slapped you around, eh?" It's like he doesn't care. He doesn't care one way or the other.
So terrible.
And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mike. Yeah, you knew
Yeah.
what was going to happen, and you don't care."
Yeah.
Anyway, the FBI
He's
guy.
like, you think that's bad? Wait till you get in the relationship with me.
The FBI guy comes by, and he's like, "Mike, why didn't you tell me you were part of the witness protection program?" And then like Mike's just like, "What? I'm not. I don't understand. I'm not part of it." And he's like, "They really train you well, eh?
Yeah.
To really not give away that you're in the witness protection." He's like, "I'm not." He's like, "Good training."
Yeah.
And he's basically, essentially he's just like, "Listen, we're gonna have the train stop at the next like whatever town or something.
Mm.
We're gonna get you off the train so you don't get to L.A. because the mob is gonna be waiting for you there." And he's just like, "Great. Can I bring Cindy with me? I'm in love with her."
Yeah, and
We're
I
gonna
like, and
start
the
a new
agent's
life."
like, "Yeah, I don't care. Sure."
Yeah, he's just like, who cares? Bring whoever you want.
Which again, I don't think that's how it works. By the way, too, you're in witness protection. You're like, "But can I bring this person?" Like, yeah.
I met this lady on the train. Can I bring her with me? I don't care.
Yeah.
Bring whoever you want. Boone, you want to come?
Yeah.
And Mike tells Cindy, he says, like, "Listen, I'm getting off the train, and I want you to come with me. So please, escape with me." And she's like, "I will, but I just need to go tell Jack first that I'm going to leave."
She feels she has a little bit to be honorable about it. She's going to leave him, but she wants to speak to him directly.
So Cindy goes back. She tells Jack, "I'm leaving you for Mike Post." And then Jack gives a huge speech about like, "Your brother told you to stay
yeah,
with me.
he like makes her feel guilty.
Yeah, you should stay." And she's like, "Oh, I guess you're right." And then Mike drops by and knocks on the door. He's like, "Are you ready? Are you ready to leave?" And she's like, No, I'm staying with Jack now. I changed my mind again."
Yeah, and I'd be like, "Oh, thanks, Cindy. So you're not terribly reliable."
Poor Cindy. She's
Yeah.
really very easily talked into things, I guess, which really does bode poorly for her relationship
Yeah.
with Mike.
Yeah.
So Mike goes, "All right, I guess you're not coming with me." Heads down to the baggage compartment to meet the FBI guy, and As he leaves back in the apartment, Jack, the abusive boyfriend's just like, I know what this all means now that you said the words Mike Post to me. Pulls out his gun, and I'm like, what's happening? I mean, I know what's happening. I can put the pieces together pretty quickly. He drops his passport on the ground. Cindy picks it up, and she looks at it. She's like, wait, isn't this the passport the Treasury Department gave to you with your new identity? Why does it say Mike Post on it?
Yeah. He's Mike Post.
He's the real Mike Post all along.
So let me just clarify. So the whole time there's two Mike Posts.
There's
two. Just coincidentally?
We'll get into it later, but I think that's the case.
Yeah, it's stupid.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. He's pulled out this gun, and Cindy's, of course, like, you're the one who's trying to kill Mike Post all along because your identity is also Mike Post. And he's just like, no, I haven't cared at all, but I'm going to go kill him now.
Yeah.
If you'll excuse me, I must go kill him now that I know he's here.
Because I'm now very angry at him. Not to the point of normal anger. I'm to the point of anger where I'm going to murder someone. I'm like, okay.
No, and I don't think he's angry at him for the Cindy thing. I think he's just like, oh, I'll just kill him for the assassin, and then the mob will think Mike Post is dead. I think that's what he thinks he's going to do. I think that's what he thinks he's going to do.
Oh, I thought it was that he was so angry about Cindy.
No, I think he's, because when he hears the name Mike Post, he's like in shock. He's like, you know what this means? I guess I'll kill him, and the mob will think I'm dead?
And so he just had a gun handy?
And he just had a gun handy.
Okay.
Anyway, Mike heads down.
As one does.
Mike heads down to the baggage compartment to find this FBI guy. There's another comic scene where he's just like, I can't find the FBI guy. Let me run my hand along this dead body that's here.
Yeah.
And then, like, he touches the face and it's like, what?
Yeah. So this scene is annoying, but what we're going to find is the
FBI
real
guy's dead.
Yeah, the FBI is dead, and the real killer's going to come out, and we'll explain that in a second. But what's going to happen 30 seconds from now is then he's going to go, hey, Mike, take that dead body and throw it out the door. I'm like, but why did you put it in the shelf to begin with? Just for that reveal?
He killed the FBI guy and then loaded him onto a baggage shelf for funsies.
Yeah, just for fun, because maybe he was like, well, I don't know. There's no reason. The reason is in this world for the hilarious reveal.
Yeah, for the hilarious. This show has two hilarious dead body reveals, which I was just like, a lot of jokes are, and they're maybe the best jokes on the show is when a man has been murdered.
Yeah. So the real killer comes in,
and it is.
Is it George Boone?
It's former George Boone. What?
No, I'm trying to.
It's former football player Fred Williamson.
Oh, it's Fred Williamson.
Who we met.
I picked the wrong name
for 10 seconds. I believe it's Al Robinson or something. But we met him for 10 seconds briefly in the middle, and it's like, it was me all along. And my favorite part is they're like, Mike's literally like, but you're a former professional football player. He's like, yeah, this is now what I do. Yeah, like, it doesn't explain why he's become an assassin. It's like,
I'm not saying it's wrong to have like a minor character that you wouldn't have expected to be the killer, but you have to have given the audience something so they go, oh, I didn't realize A, B, C, D adds up. Like,
he should have been someone else in the mix.
Yes, there should have been a reason, or you should have learned something. It can't just be one of the 86 characters we happen to walk by and you go, he's the murderer. Why? It doesn't matter. He just is, and you wouldn't have known it because it makes no sense. It's like, guys, that's just bad writing.
Yeah. At any rate, as you said, the assassin has him open the big, like, baggage loading door on the side of the train. So, like, a huge door opens on the side of the train. He has Mike drag the FBI body, push him off the side. He's got Mike at gunpoint the whole time. And he's got Mike standing at Mike's back's to the open door. The gun's pointed at him, and the assassin's like, well, now that I've got you right where I want you, let me put my gun away. And I'm like, why? Just shoot him and knock him off the train. But he puts his gun away, and then Mike proceeds...
He was scared if he shot him, another suitcase would get in the way.
I guess so. Mike proceeds to leap onto the assassin like he's a monkey.
Yeah.
He, like, latches on to his midsection.
That's exactly what it looks like.
All limbs wrapped around him.
Yeah, they wrestle for a while. They both go over the edge.
Well, that's my favorite part, is they're wrestling for a while next to the open door, and then Jack, the abusive boyfriend with his gun, he's showing up now to kill Mike. He peeks his head through the door and just watches them both fall off the side of the train. He's just like, oh, okay. Well, I guess that's it. Yeah, I'll just go shut this door for everybody.
Yeah.
And he, like, closes the door, and what we see is Mike is somehow hanging on to the side of the moving train.
He is a monkey.
He is a monkey, and he has not fallen off. Only the assassin has. He's now latched onto the side of the train.
Yeah, and this now sets up the big kind of money adventure kind of scenes where it's going to be what everyone enjoys, a fight on top of the train, which I was kind of bummed a little bit because it didn't have the chasing on top of the train scene that I was kind of hoping for.
Yeah, it doesn't really end up coming. I mean, kind of what happens is, as a keen viewer would remember, like yourself, Jordan, the FBI guy had asked the train to stop at the next station so that they could get Mike off. So you're sitting there waiting. It's like, well, Mike won't be on the side of the train for long. They're about to stop. But Winfield walks in, and the conductor's just like, we've got to stop because the FBI told us to. And Winfield's like, no, I'm the wealthiest man in America. We're not stopping for shit. Keep driving.
Yeah.
So Mike's stuck on the top of the train. Jack is going back. He's put his gun away. All his problems are solved. Mike Post is dead. How the mob is going to find out that he fell off the side of the train, I have no idea how he thinks that's going to get back to them, but he's very calm now. And as he goes back to his compartment, he looks out the window. Hey, isn't that Mike Post climbing the side of the train?
Yeah, so he does what any sane person would do. He's like, I guess I'll also go out on the side of the train and shoot him, I guess, for some reason.
Well, as you know, on all trains, they don't lock any of the outdoor compartments, so he just climbs the ladder and gets onto the top of the train himself.
Yeah. So then it's like, it's a good idea. The actual sequence isn't put together in the most exciting way, but it's Mike kind of crawling to the front, and this jerk face boyfriend guy is chasing him,
shooting
kind
at
of
him,
kind of shooting him, and he's avoiding the shots. And so we get a thing that I think he eventually gets to a point where everyone can see him.
He gets to a bar car, and they're having a farewell celebration because they're almost
right.
in LA inside. And Mike like slides down one of the windows, so Mike's now completely exposed. And similar to the pool scene,
yes, they all can see him.
Rick's drunk. He's like, "Hey, it's my buddy. He's outside of the train now."
Yeah, and they can, I guess, seemingly see that he's being shot at. So they're like, we need to do something. And
pandemonium just breaks loose.
So like,
everyone's freaking out.
We should stop the train. And they're like, I don't know who is suggesting.
Well, no. This is what happens: is they're freaking out. Everyone's losing their mind because he's on the outside of the train. Someone's shooting at him. It's going crazy. Winfield walks into the celebration. He sees what's happening, and he's just like, "Well, I know what to do about this." He grabs the phone, calls the driver. He's just like, "Push it to the red."
Yeah. So instead of slowing it down, they're like, "Let's go it really
as fast as possible,
so that one of them will blow off, maybe?
One or both will just blow off. Problem solved.
Yeah. So they go, I don't know if they actually show how fast it is, but we know it goes way past what this is safe for the train because, like, an alarm goes off.
It goes into the red line.
Yeah.
Like, a little thing goes in. And Jack, at some point, attempts to stand up to shoot Mike again. The wind catches him, I guess.
Yeah.
And he flies backwards through a window into the bar car where he lands, and someone will be like, "Oh, my God. He died of a gunshot wound." And I was like, huh? So apparently, while flying through the air and crashing through the window, he also shot himself, and now he is dead.
Yeah.
They tell the train to stop now that he's dead. They go out. They rescue Mike, who's hanging on the front.
Yeah.
Cindy comes in, sees her abusive boyfriend's dead. It's like, great, now I'm with Mike, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just like the end, and we get like a 10-minute denouement.
Yeah, where it's like, they go out. They basically have to wrap everything up that you didn't really care about.
Do you have all? Do you have all the plot wrap-ups written down?
You can do it. I only know the main one.
So they stop the train. It's over. They're in LA. First thing that happens, Mike gets off the train. The Treasury Department is waiting for him, and they're there to tell him exactly what happened between him and that old Jack guy. And they explain that lately their witness protection identities haven't really been working. And I'm just like, excuse me?
I know, it didn't, but I was like, okay, so...
But that's unrelated to what's happened here.
Yeah.
They're just saying, in general, we're doing a bad job of protecting witnesses. So, but then they're like, what we think has happened here is Jack must have been worried about how bad we are at keeping people alive. So he bribed someone in our department to give him the name Mike Post instead of the one we assigned him. And somehow... you ended up on the same train as him, so coincidentally...
It's just happenstance.
The name he randomly picked for himself that he bribed somebody to give him is also your name. I'm just like, I don't understand. And like the guy's just like... and then the treasurer guy's like, well, weird, eh? Bye.
Yeah, can't you believe that happened? Yeah, what they're, I think, really hoping is that you've had such a good time as the viewer that you don't really think about the details because you're just like, I can't believe what a wild ride that was. But at the whole time, you're like, but this doesn't...
But why?
Sense.
That's
why?
the thing is, like, they should have just not included that scene. Because, like, I didn't need to think about those details either because they don't make any sense. And then to have someone come in and explain it to you and be like, you notice how everything I'm telling you makes no sense? I'm like, yeah, why are you telling me? Anyway, that wraps up that weird why Jack had the same name.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Doesn't really, but yeah.
Then we get a series of events that we never saw. There's the whole thing about the agent Lucy trying to get Karen the part. We never saw any of that stuff happening because we were focused on Mike trying to keep Rick from getting drunk.
Yeah.
But what we learn is the agent may possibly have gotten Karen the part. But in order to seal the deal, she needs to leave the train station with the producer to go to a secondary location to have a conversation. But the actress is so impressed by her boyfriend getting drunk and beating the shit out of the producer.
Because he's shown her that he loves her.
Yeah. I can't believe you punched that man in the face. I've never loved you more. I'm not going to go with the producer anymore. I'm going to make it work with my drunk, angry husband.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so Karen fires her agent, and Rick and Karen leave. They're like, we're together now. Great. I'm like, I didn't know anything about you, and I don't know why we're here.
Yeah.
And now the agent won't be able to pay Mike's gambling debts, so Mike has nothing. He's like, well, I have no money now.
Yeah, and the mob's showing up, and he has nothing to
Nothing
give.
to do. And Rick says...
So let me just mention
Yes.
real quick, though. Let's say everything had worked out well for him.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't going to give him $40,000 in cash at that second anyway. So, like, what was his
I
plan?
don't fully understand either. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Anyway.
But he doesn't have it. Mike goes to see Rick, congratulating him on getting his wife back, I guess. I don't know. And Rick's like, buddy, I had such a nice time on the train with you. Why don't I just go get you some of Karen's money? Because I don't have any of my own. I just live off my wife. I get drunk and beat up people and ruin her career. But she has a lot of money. So like he literally is like, I'll go get her money and we'll pay the $40K. And Mike's like, no, I would never take your money. I'll figure it out myself. And then Karen, the wife, comes by and she's like, hey, hey, Mike, you did such a great job with my husband. Why don't I hire you to be his permanent friend? And he's like, great. I can't wait to take this job as his permanent friend.
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll call you with the details. And they get it and drive away.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah. They need to wrap things up, but they have given very little thought as to how this should be done. So they're just like, yeah, everything's good. He's got a job now. He's going to be that guy's friend.
Yeah. Your permanent job is his friend. I'm like, okay. And it's at this point, finally, Big Ed and the mob shows up. And they're like, Mike, give us that money. And Mike's like, I don't have it, Big Ed. I don't have it. And his new girlfriend, Cindy, walks up because they're about to get a cab. And she's like, oh, no, what's going on, Mike? And he's like, I didn't tell you, but I owe a lot of money to the mob. And I know you have bad dealings with the mob in the past, but I hope that's not a problem. And Cindy looks at Big Ed and says, how much does he owe? And he's like, $40K. And she's like, oh, no problem. She opens a briefcase just full of stacks of money. She's
millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars. She's like, I think these four equal $40,000. Here you go, Big Ed. And Mike's just like, what? She's like, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. This is all the money Jack stole from the mob, and it's ours now. And Mike's just like, oh, great. Well, let's go spend all your money on his honeymoon for me.
Yeah. Also, is that how it works? You're now a mob informant that is in the witness protection, and the FBI lets you keep all the money that you stole from them?
I guess you didn't tell them about it.
You didn't tell them.
And
Anyways.
it's the Treasury Department.
Yeah, right.
FBI's not involved in this.
Right. Well, no, the agent was from the FBI.
That's true, but he didn't know. He had no idea.
That's true.
Anyway, my favorite part of this ending is just like both Mike and Rick, two of the most useless, dumb men you've ever met, are both revealed to like desperately just trying to be living off women in their lives.
Yeah, and it's weird also that they sort of just skirt over the issue that Mike has a gambling problem. They mentioned it many times. Like, he has a gambling problem.
Like, a huge problem.
He doesn't fix that, and that's not his journey. It's not like, oh, I'm going to be a better person who doesn't have this addiction.
No, I just need to find a woman with a lot of money to solve my problem.
So that we can do this again.
I mean, it's working for Rick, so why can't it work for Mike?
And that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that wraps up the show. Like, it's just like, we're done. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, the weird thing about this pilot is, in some ways, I understand what the format is going to be, and I guess the tone. But another way, I'm just like, is this enough of a show? Do you know, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, everything is so on the surface and so wishy-washy, and it's like there's no tension, there's no excitement, there's no character development. It moves at a snail's pace. There's no real mystery.
No.
So, like, what am I going to tune into next week? That's what I would have thought if I'd watched this first episode. I'm like, this does not bode well for future episodes.
I do feel like what they're relying on is just like, and it's a problem because I don't know who any of these people are. I never watched them on whatever show they got famous on. But I think the part of it is just like, you're going to tune in to see a cool guest star you really like just do a part.
Right. You're like, oh, Alan Alda's in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, I love Alan. Let's see what he's doing on Supertrain.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. Like, I think we've covered it all. I am a little flummoxed because, like, coming into it, I was like, "Oh yeah, atomic-powered Supertrain, great." But I'm like, this is not science fiction.
No, I thought the same thing. There's at least not in this episode.
Maybe
there's no real sense of like fantasy, which is kind of interesting because they've set up this is something
it seems futuristic.
But they're like, oh, but it's just the 70s. We're gonna have a disco on this futuristic thing. You're like, oh, but there's like you guys have so many options. Like even in this murder thing, this murder plot line, you could have done something that was related to the train in some way, and it's not really.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a location. It's a really cool, interesting thing, but like it's just a location.
I mean, it's just funny because I guess we'll have to see this when we watch the show, but it really does. What it is like we're gonna have a bottle episode every episode because you're just trapped on this train.
Yeah. Well, I do hope there's something, I don't know, train related. They're like, because again, this could have taken place on a plane.
This train better have lasers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an hour-and-a-half pilot, which felt about 86 hours. Both Luke and I were talking before we recorded that, like,
it was tough to get through.
It's tough to get. How long did your first sitting? How much did you get through?
I did 45 minutes the first time.
I did 40,
and then after that, it was in 5-minute chunks.
Yeah, mine was the same. Yeah, it's like I'm looking like every 3 minutes. You're just like, oh, this is so slow and painful.
I'm trying to take notes to like figure out the plot, and because there's so many characters who just get random scenes that don't mean anything, I was having trouble tracking like what's important here. So my notes on the actual episode are really long, and then I had to figure out how to like condense them. I'm like, well, this is only just about Mike trying to get killed. Like I don't know why there's 75 other characters.
Well, that's how we could get it through it. I think this is gonna be about an hour us talking about it. But just because we're whipping through it, like again, this is not what the episode's like. There's so much happening that doesn't matter, and it kind of comes at you forever.
It does come at you forever.
Yeah. So let's rank this old son of a gun.
What do you want to give the pilot episode Express the Terror?
I'm so torn because part of me wants to give it a 0, but like what, I'm gonna give it. It's a pilot. I'm gonna give it a little bit of leeway that they're still finding their footing. Maybe it'll be a little more interesting, but it's not good. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
It's not good.
Here's the thing: is I also am torn. Like I like the train miniatures; they look great.
Yeah, they do look great. That's we didn't even mention enough. It looks really, really good.
And I get it's a pilot, so I'm willing to give some wiggle room. It is too long, but the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more I dislike it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough place to be. So I'm gonna go 3.5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're in pretty similar places.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times where I thought it was a 6, and there's been times when I thought it was a 1. But I'm gonna go 3.5.
I don't know how we're gonna get through this whole series if this is what it's gonna be.
I mean, I think this might be. We'll get through the next couple, and then we'll escape this pod.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a real fun.
It might pick up. And here's the thing:
there'll be a clown assassin who needs to defuse a bomb,
and maybe we'll get like a guest star that we know, and it'll actually be really fun to watch them do a crazy 70s show.
Yeah. George C. Scott is in this episode.
Honestly, can you imagine? And we probably like, this is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope. I really do hope.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. That wraps it up for this episode. So, of course, you can email us anytime you want to tell Jordan what a great job he's doing.
Oh, okay. Sure, yeah.
Emails continuumdrag@gmail.com. And on Instagram and Twitter, we'll have clips from the show, atomic trains, people getting assassinated, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you are you pulling all the scenes where he's Jack's yelling at poor Cindy?
Yeah, I'm gonna just really force people to watch that nightmare come to life. You can follow that at Continuum Drag is the handle on Instagram and Twitter. And that wraps it up. So thank you for joining us, listener, and we'll see you next week, Jordan.
Yeah, sprinkle that over your liver.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.